Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. I just want to give an update about the Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt case. If you don't know who Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt are, they are partners, were partners in a counseling service that was created and founded by Jodi Hildebrandt called Connections, a type of family counseling type of service. And before that, Ruby Franke was she's an ex-YouTuber. She was a YouTuber. She is now ex-YouTuber. She shut down her channel early in 2023, and she did a lot of family vlogging, and her parenting style was probably the main showcase of her YouTube channel. Every video just about concerned her children or had something to do with the way that she was raising her kids. And she really prided herself on the way that she was parenting her children, and that was probably the centerpiece of her YouTube channel. And she also used a parenting style that she kind of considered as to be of natural consequences, which means their actions had to suffer a consequence. And for example, one of her youngest children did not bring a lunch to school, and when the school called asking her to bring a lunch, she told them that she wouldn't bring it because it was the consequence of that child not preparing and fixing their lunch and bringing it to school with them. But that child was 5 or 6 years old. I think she was like in kindergarten, maybe first grade, I'm not even sure. And, I think you have a responsibility as an adult for you to do your part to check on your children, because they're not going to remember every little thing, at that age. So they do need some kind of prompting and some kind of, you need to check, make sure that they have their food, everything that they need. And you can't totally depend on a 5 or 6 year old to have everything under control. And I think that, they're of the Mormon faith. The Franke family is of the Mormon faith, which they're followers of the LDS. Not the fundamentalist branch, but just the Latter-day Saints part. They're not a part of the little sprouted offshoot of the fundamentalist group. They're not part of that. But I think a lot of her parenting style was influenced by her religious beliefs, and that's, it's kind of indicative for religious groups to use strictness and fear and shame it's kind of indicative of a lot of organized religions to use that to control their members. And I think she did the same thing with her children. And Utah is the first state to actually enact laws to protect parents, the first free-range state. And it protects parents that they can allow their kids to walk to the park or walk home from school, or to stay home by themselves, to do a lot of things without it being considered neglect. Because there was a case in Maryland in 2015 of a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old that were walking home from the park, I believe, and a police officer saw them, and it resulted in the parents being charged with neglect. And that, to me, I think is a little... I was a free-range child. I was a child of, the 70s, and I was born in the 60s. By the time I was around 7 years old, I was completely unsupervised. I roamed the city on my bike. I went everywhere by myself. I rode for miles in traffic on my bike and just walking, skateboarding, all by myself. And I think that free range, it does make your child more independent, stronger. They make decisions. They're able to understand the consequences of things that they do. And I think, free range, I think it's very important to let kids have some independence and learn a lot of things on their own. I don't think being a helicopter parent or just being over the shoulder nonstop is healthy for a child, because if you're going to turn your child loose, at the age of 18, and plus Ruby Franke had a rule that as soon as her kids turned 18, she wanted them out of the house. So that was kind of, I think a lot of the thinking that she had was to make them although she was strict, she was very contradictory. She could be very strict, but free range also, this case deals with aggravated child abuse, which is a serious charge. When you put aggravated in front of something, it means it's of a serious nature. And Franke is being charged with these counts because of the situation with her son who escaped from Jodi Hildebrandt's house. He had duct tape around his hands. He was emaciated, and another child was found in the house in the same condition. Sometimes starvation is a tactic that parents use to control their children. I don't really think that free range, I don't know how that's going to play out in the court, because using that as a way to control your kids, I think that is neglect and abuse, of course. But with the free range laws, it might not be looked upon as strictly as it would in other states. But in her case, her minor children are in the care of DCFS, which is the Division of Child and Family Services in Utah. So she has no contact with her children. And she was held without bail. Both her and Jodi Hildebrandt are being held without bail. They've been in there for about 3.5 months. And I don't know that they would really be released, because the judge has already made a decision to hold them without bail. The only way I believe that they would ever get bail would be because her children are in the care of DCFS, which, she has no contact with them. I don't really think she's a flight risk. I don't really see her flying off to another country or leaving the U.S. I really don't see that happening. I think she would stay in the community and not make herself not be able to be found. But I think the problem would be her children. She has to stay away from them. And that would be probably the only minuscule reason that the judge would give her bail. And Kevin Franke, her husband, has filed for divorce, and he is seeking custody of the children. And the court has, or in court, Ruby Franke has the right to have her accusers face her. So prosecutors can call all kinds of witnesses. They can call neighbors, people from her church, the man that made the 911 call. So there's a lot of evidence against her. It's been characterized as copious amounts of evidence. And her own YouTube videos would be one of the main sources of it, because she always prided herself on how she's raising her kids, and that she doesn't allow her kids to do certain things, and she's very strict with them. And the withholding of the food, that is probably going to play into the emaciated child's condition. So in that respect, I think even though there are free range laws not stating exactly how much you have to feed your kids or when, or, there's not a timetable or, set way of feeding your kids. And I think that would be the only way I think that her lawyers would try to argue, which I think would be just useless because of the condition that the child was found in. So some people were saying that the withholding of food is not exactly neglect in that state, but I do think it is in the condition that child was found. Obviously, it's to an extreme amount, or to an extreme state, that she has been withholding food. And the prosecutors have asked for a waiver hearing on December 18th. So the waiver hearing would be a hearing to try to eliminate the original hearing, or preliminary hearing, which is the hearing where attorneys will give their outline of their case and try to argue whether or not there is probable cause that she should be charged with this crime. And I think the only reason that the prosecution asked for this waiver hearing is because they have such a strong case. There is so much evidence against her. And like I say, the children might have to testify against her because she has the right to have her accusers face her. Her oldest daughter, Sherry, is the one that called many police agencies or agencies to try to get, I think, DCFS, the police, different types of agencies to try to get some result to get them to remove the kids or to investigate, you know, the condition of the children. So I'm pretty sure they're going to probably call Sherry. And the 911 call will be, I'm sure, definitely admitted into evidence. And the gentleman who made the call may or may not be called. And the neighbors, like I say, neighbors, church members, anybody who has a conflict with the way that she's raising her kids that directly know her, family members, sisters, brothers, any friends, anybody who is aware of what was going on could be called as witnesses against her. And they might be hostile witnesses because sometimes a family member, even though they know something that is bad is happening, they don't want to testify against their family member, or they don't feel like betraying their family member, so they'll be classified as a hostile witness. But there's so much evidence against her, so I think that jail is imminent in her future. And the same with Jodi Hildebrandt, who knew exactly, I absolutely believe that she knew exactly what was going on, because it happened in her house. There's 2 children that were being binded with duct tape, that were emaciated, and absolutely, that is why they got 6 counts of aggravated child abuse, because they both got the same counts, and I believe that they both will serve time in jail. And Jodi Hildebrandt was a licensed counselor, mental health counselor, but she has given up her license to the Utah Division of Licensing, so she will not be, I don't know if there is like a time limit if she were to get out of jail or not be sentenced to jail, if she could get her license back. I'm not sure about that. But you know, the last thing that you can really say about it is what goes around comes around. Ruby Franke wanted her children to suffer natural consequences for their actions, and now the natural consequences of Ruby's actions are going to hit upon her. So we'll see on December 18th what happens in this hearing, the waiver hearing, and see if they are going to let the preliminary hearing stand, or if they're going to eliminate that waiver hearing. And one of the reasons for that, like I said, would be the prosecution thinks that they probably have a really strong case against them because there's so much evidence against her. And that leads the way for the prosecution to accept a plea deal from her. And if she wants to avoid less time, probably admitting to it, there's just so much evidence against her. And it would be hard for her to fight against the evidence, and she may have been counseled with her attorneys that maybe pleading guilty and taking a lesser charge or a lesser time in jail would be prudent instead of trying to stand trial for something as egregious as this, because this is a really serious case. It's just documented, and there's a lot of children, I believe, that are in circumstances like this. But the difference with this case is it was so publicly known. There's so many people that evidence that showed that were witness to it, and there's so much evidence to show against her. So we'll see what her consequences are eventually. And thank you all for coming to my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll get back to you with another video. Thank you.